Monarchy and modern democracy in Great Britain. Great Britain has a monarch, as you can see here, but in Great Britain they don't have political power. There is a separation of power. First you can say there is a parliament, which is the legislature, and it is divided in three parts. The first part is the Queen, which is the head of parliament. Second, there is the House of Lords, and third, there is the House of Commons, as you can see here. They both make the laws. Then there is the executive, which does mean the government, and the head of the government is the Prime Minister. The cabinet is also a part of the executive. Then there is the judiciary. That does mean the courts, for example the Supreme Court and the British law. Then I will tell you something about the British Empire. The first British Empire was built in the end of the 17th century. There were a lot of colonies and much slaves work there. The second British Empire was built during the 19th century, and the importance were in the sea routes and the ports. There were a lot of more colonies than in the first British Empire, as you can see on the map. And one of them was India, which was something like the pillar of the empire, but also more than a third of Africa was part of the British Empire, as you can see here, and also Canada, Australia and New Zealand. In 1931, the empire turned into the Commonwealth. That was a reaction from the British Empire because the colonies like Canada and some other start to fight for independence. It is today a voluntary association which bind the colonies with Great Britain, but they are all independent. The Crown is a unity force for its members. There are two types of monarchy. First, the constitutional monarchy. That does mean that the power is limited by a constitution, as you can see on the left, and there is the parliament on the top of the state. And the royal family hasn't got any political power and have to be politically neutral. They only could give advice to the ministers. On the right you can see the absolute monarchy, where the monarch is the head of the state and has all the power, so there is no constitution. And the monarch also makes the law by themselves. Then I will tell you something about the role of the Queen. On the one hand, there is the function as the head of the state, but only in a representative way. Her duties are to make state visits, and at these state visits she has to represent the state. She also has to sign the acts of the parliament, but she isn't allowed to judge them, she only has to sign them. And at the end she has also some meetings with the Prime Minister. Her second function is to be the head of the nation. She has ceremonial and official duties and has to represent the nation of Britain. She also has to provide stability in times of change. She embodies the national identity and unity, and maybe one of the most important functions of the Queen today is to support 3,000 organizations. In the end, you can ask yourself the question, should be the monarchy abolished or not? First, there are some arguments for the abolishment. There were never a vote for or against the monarchy, and in a modern democracy this is totally intolerable. It is also unacceptable that taxpayers have to pay so much money for a very rich family. And then you can ask yourself, is it still a social engagement if they are getting so much money for it? But there are also some arguments against the abolishment. First, you can say that the monarchy is harmless because they don't have political power. And the social work from the royals is for the whole country very important. And they also embody the history and identity because the politicians come and go, but the monarchy always will stay.
When dealing with monarchy, you always think about the famous movie The King's Speech. The movie begins with the death of King George V. Then his son, King Edward VIII, abdicates and Bertie became new king. He's called King George VI. Because of his stammer, it's hard for him to give speeches. The speech therapist Lionel Logue is his last chance to overcome his stammer. First, they had a very hard beginning because of Logue's unorthodox therapies. But England needs a good speeches from their king because it is on the brink of war. That is why they work very hard, and a deep relationship between Logue and King George and also his families develops. So the king can overcome his stammer and helps his country. As you can see in the poster, it is a true story, or it is based on a true story. So the beginning of the movie is 1925. So at the beginning of the Second World War, Bertie got ill because of Lancaster, and now Queen Elizabeth II is the queen. In the family tree of the movie, you can see the actual Queen Elizabeth II and the whole family. Yeah, to talk about the main character, Bertie, or King George VI, he's married to Elizabeth and he loves and trusts her. He has two daughters, Margaret and Elizabeth II. In the past, he loves his older brother, and his younger brother, John Charles, died. And the nanny of the three children didn't like him. Bertie knows about his duties and is a responsible and disciplined person. The relationship to his dad is not that good because Bertie feels like he can't live up to his father's expectation and is really under pressure. The relationship between Bertie and David is also not good because he can't understand the relationship to Wallace. I will come back to this later. And also the relationship between Bertie and Wallace is very hard because Bertie doesn't like her but treats her in a friendly way because he's the king and needs to do. To talk about the wife, Elizabeth, she actually doesn't want to become queen but supports Bertie in all what he do. He has empathy and is a loving wife and mother. She's humble, polite, powerful and self-confident, but also sometimes arrogant and funny at times. She made the contact between the king and Logue and supports the methods of Logue. She judges hard what Davis and Wallace do and is impolite towards Wallace. Lionel Logue is not a real doctor, but knows how to handle Bertie, and some people say that he is almost disrespectful with his open-mindedness, but he is the only one that is able to help Bertie. He doesn't care about royalty, money or social status, which makes the relationship first very hard. So David, the older brother, bullies Bertie because of his stammer and doesn't believe in his skills. He abdicates because he wants to marry Wallace, an American woman who is twice divorced. That is why he doesn't care about his family and country and prefers enjoying his life.